Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Gyan Bhakti. We are currently exploring the scripture Mysticism of Srimad Bhagavatam. Commentaries by my Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So in today's satsang, we will be studying uprooting the twin Arjuna trees. We are discussing the various leelas or miracles of Lord Krishna when he was a child in Gokul with his parents Nanda and Yashoda. When Yashoda was away taking care of her household duties, Krishna remained tied to the mortar that we had covered in the previous satsang. Looking around, her eyes fell upon two nearby Arjuna trees, big trees. Krishna knew that two spirits were in bondage in the form of those two twin trees. In more ancient times, those spirits, they were called Nal Kuber and Manigriva, were sons of Kuber, the gods of treasure. One day in the Himalayan mountains by the banks of the Mandakini river, they were drunk and sporting with young women when sage Narada passed by. The women felt ashamed of their behavior and showed respect to Narada, but the two brothers remained completely in a state of disrespectful intoxication and did not show any reverence to the saint. Seeing this and desirous of correcting their errors for their ultimate good, Narada cursed them. Having attained the wonderful position of being the sons of Kubera, you have become vain and conceited, intoxicated by your youthful charm, living only for pleasure. Because you have acted like senseless trees, may you both become trees. And we have already covered this in the past satsanga of what the mystical meaning of these curses are and why do sages and saints do that. It is ultimately for our own good. When Nal Kubera and Manigriva heard the words of Narada, they begged for mercy. Narada told them, "This all will turn out to be in your favor. In a future, after 100 celestial years have passed, Krishna will incarnate and will bring release for both of you." Thus, as Krishna gazed at the Arjuna trees, he thought to himself, "Now this is my responsibility to please my devotees, Narada, and release the twin spirits who are in bondage in the form of those twin trees." So God follows the commands or even curses of his sons, of his devotees, sages and saints who are highly advanced, because they are connected with divinity, and God says there is nobody more important to him than a pure-hearted devotee. So Krishna dragged the mortar by his immense strength, passing between the twin trees in such ways that both trees were completely uprooted. Imagine just a small child, very young, and able to have that level of strength. It's not physically possible for human beings to do that, since it was super incarnation, in reincarnation, superhuman force. He had that ability for him to do these leelas for us. They fell with a great crashing sound that caused the earth to shake. Then from within the trees, two spirits emerged, offering prayers to Krishna, because they had been stunted from their divinity of being the sons of Kubera, sons of wealth, to the state of becoming trees, which I always and we always discuss this, that human embodiment is not a guarantee for another human embodiment or our progress. We can easily get demoted as well, or get fallen off to a lower embodiment if we become too arrogant, too pompous, too conceited. So therefore, humility and love and compassion is always important. Love of God is always central to this journey. Krishna, who still appeared as a little child tied to the mortar, said, "You both had become conceited, blinded because of your prosperity. By the curse of Narada, you have been freed of that pride." So sometimes this is what it takes. If we don't do it in this human embodiment, we will eventually get there. But when? Only destiny and time can tell. How many embodiments? Only destiny and time can tell. So we have to be very humble on this path. So Narada ultimately has caused great good for you, Krishna said to them. Go now to your homes and be devoted to me. You have attained the highest goal, devotion to God. And that truly is the highest goal. Unless devotion comes in your heart, everything is only at an intellectual and theoretical level. So when you pray to God, you ask for bhakti, you ask for devotion, for love. When the gopis and gopas near Krishna's home heard the crashing sound of the falling trees, they rushed to see what had happened. There they saw Krishna safe and sound, still tied to the mortar and the trees uprooted. They could not figure out how this amazing event had happened. There were children nearby who told the people that it was Krishna who had broken the trees. Further, they related how out of the trees two luminous figures had appeared and how they had conversed with Krishna and then flew to heaven. The grown-ups thought of the words of these children that they were merely the product of wild imagination. Even though the children were telling the truth, the big people could not believe them and did not believe them. They could not believe how 3-year-old Krishna, helplessly tied to a mortar, could have brought about the destruction of two giant trees. So they simply ignored what the children were saying. However, overjoyed that Krishna was safe, Nanda rushed towards the boy and released him from the ropes that bound him to the mortar. So, mystical meaning. The twin sons of Kubera, whose spirits were locked into the Arjuna trees, represent the mental energy that is wasted or confined by raga and dvesha. Raga means attachment, dvesha is hatred. In the state of bondage, people love and hate things selectively. You love things that please you or hate things that displease you according to your tastes, your fancies, your impressions of consciousness. In the commotion of swinging between raga and dvesha, one does not hear the voice of intellect, reason. When the energies behind the desire to have joy and eliminate suffering have been mishandled, the spirit in a human being becomes cramped like those spirits reborn as the twin Arjuna trees, and the unfoldment of the soul is restricted. Under the sway of raga and dvesha, one also ignores satsanga, or the association with the wise, that puts an end to the cycles of birth and death and leads to true happiness. Narada is the embodiment of satsanga. Wherever he goes, he shares his fragrance of wisdom and divinity and knowledge. When satsanga is ignored and liberation is not the goal of life, a person merely grows like corn and dies like corn, says Katha Upanishad, which means we are only living at the material level and we consider this body as the only existent process, and that there is no reincarnation. Therefore, we live in ignorance and miss out on this holy opportunity that we all have. The soul enters into a process of repeated embodiments as a result because of karma, incarnating again and again in vain pursuits of illusory pleasures, which cannot give us happiness or satisfaction. However, when your devotion and faith in God becomes rock-like, when they become as solid as Yashoda's mortar, and you have tied Krishna to that mortar of faith within your heart, a miracle occurs. Raga and dvesha are uprooted, and the spiritual energy that has been locked up by attachment and hatred is released. That energy is the giver of immense force. If you have channeled that energy, it will give you the treasure of immortality or mukti, self-realization. Every negative quality in a human being is like electrical energy, which is short-circuited. Short-circuited energy creates terrible problems. The mortar, and the moment you set it right, the energy flows in a positive and effective way. It no longer is dangerous. But we have to fix it. When uprooted, raga assumes its spiritual form and we become increasingly attached to God. the source of all happiness, the object of infinite love. You develop cosmic consciousness and love all beings and objects as manifestations of God. We see God in all. That is a very advanced and high state of bhakti and spirituality. Similarly, when dvesha or hatred is uprooted, the urge to negate is sublimated. We understand that the world is illusory, that all names and forms are constantly changing. Thereby we develop dispassion. We negate or hate the whole world process itself, not just a few things. As a result, we outstep the world, which means we develop vairagya or dispassion, and we move out. This type of sublimated raga and dvesha does not bind the soul. It liberates us. In other words, we rise above attachment and hatred. This is represented in the story by the emergence of the transformed and luminous twin spirits offering prayers of adoration and surrender to Krishna. When they were under the influence of wealth and power and fame, they became arrogant and conceited, and when they were pulled and yanked out as trees by Krishna, they came back to their original humble form and became devotees of Lord Krishna. So this is the essence of today's satsang. This is Swami Nikhilanand. Om Tat Sat.